The rain started slowly that evening, but within minutes it turned into a heavy downpour. In the middle of the compound, a small crowd had already gathered. Neighbors stood at their doors and windows, whispering quietly as they watched the scene unfolding. From the second-floor balcony, Madam Briggs leaned over the railing with a look of pure irritation on her face. "Throw everything outside," she shouted angrily. Two young men she had hired dragged a thin mattress through the door and tossed it out into the muddy street. A small plastic chair followed. Then 2 bags of clothes. Standing helplessly by the gate was Amaka. Her eyes were red from crying, and the rain soaked through her clothes, but she didn't move. She simply watched as the few things she owned were thrown out like trash. Beside her stood her 6-year-old son, Daniel. The boy held tightly onto his mother's hand, frightened by the shouting and confused by what was happening. "Mummy," he whispered softly. "Why are they taking our things outside?" Amaka knelt down and hugged him close. Her heart was breaking, but she tried to hide it from him. "It's okay, my baby," she whispered. "Everything will be fine." But the truth was, she had no idea how. Looking up at the balcony again, Amaka folded her hands together and begged. "Madam Briggs, please. I'm begging you. Just give me 2 more weeks." Her voice trembled. "I lost my job, but I'm trying to find another one. I promise I will pay everything." Madam Briggs scoffed loudly. "You people always have the same story," she shouted so everyone could hear. 2 weeks, 1 month, next thing you disappear." Amaka shook her head quickly. "No, madam, I would never do that. You know me. I have always paid before." And that was true. For 2 years, Amaka had never been late with rent. She worked at a small restaurant nearby and managed to take care of herself and her son. But life can change in a single moment. The restaurant closed suddenly when the owner ran into
debt and fled the city. Since then, Amaka had been searching everywhere for work. Every morning she left early. Every evening she returned tired and disappointed. But Madam Briggs didn't care about any of that. "If you don't have my rent today," the landlady snapped, "you leave my house today." The rain poured harder. Within minutes the rest of Amaka's belongings were thrown outside the compound. Her cooking pots. Daniel's small school bag. A toy car he loved dearly. The little boy picked it up and held it tightly. "Mommy, where will we sleep tonight?" he asked, his voice shaking. Amaka swallowed the lump in her throat. She forced a weak smile. "God will help us," she said softly. Up on the balcony, Madam Briggs folded her arms proudly. "Take your rubbish and disappear from my property," she yelled. Amaka slowly gathered their things. Her dignity was already shattered in front of the entire compound. Without saying another word, she held Daniel's hand and began walking down the dark street. Behind her, Madam Briggs watched with satisfaction. "To think she thought she could stay here without paying rent," she muttered. At that moment, the cruel landlady believed she had won. But life was about to prove her very wrong. A night with no home. The rain continued as Amaka and Daniel walked down the quiet street. Every shop was closing. Every house door was shut. After walking for nearly an hour, they finally stopped under the small roof of a closed shop. Daniel sat beside his mother and rested his head on her shoulder. "Mommy, are we poor?" he asked quietly. The question cut deep into Amaka's heart. She stroked his hair gently. "No, my son," she replied softly. "We are not poor. We are just passing through a hard time." Daniel nodded slowly, but sleep soon took over. He curled up beside her on the cold floor. Amaka stayed awake, staring into the darkness. Her mind raced with worry. Where would they go tomorrow? How would she find work? How long could they survive? Just as she was about to cry again, headlights appeared in the distance. A black car slowly stopped near the shop. The window rolled down. Inside sat an elderly man with kind eyes. "Madam," he called gently. Why are you and the child outside at this hour? Amaka hesitated. But something about the man felt safe. So she told him everything. When she finished speaking, the man sat quietly for a moment. Then he smiled. My name is Mr. Okafor, he said. I have a small guest house nearby. You and your son can stay there for now. Amaka's eyes widened. Sir, I cannot afford it. Mr. Okafor waved his hand. Sometimes kindness is more important than money. That night, for the first time in days, Amaka and her son slept on a warm bed. And little did she know. That moment would change her entire life. A second chance. Days turned into weeks. Amaka never wasted the opportunity she had been given. Every morning she woke up early and searched for jobs. She applied everywhere. But jobs were difficult to find. One afternoon, Mr. Okafor called her into his office. I have been watching you, he said. You are hardworking and respectful. Amaka listened quietly. I own a small catering business, he continued. My manager recently resigned. Would you like to help run the kitchen? Amaka almost couldn't believe what she was hearing. Sir, are you serious? He nodded. Everyone deserves a second chance. Amaka worked harder than she ever had in her life. Her cooking was delicious. Customers loved her food. Orders began increasing. Within months, the catering business grew rapidly. Mr. Okafor promoted her to operations manager. Her salary increased. For the first time in a long time, life began to improve. Daniel started attending a better school. Amaka saved enough money to rent a comfortable apartment. Hope returned to their lives. The fall of Madame Briggs. Meanwhile, Madame Briggs continued her cruel ways. She shouted at tenants, increased rent suddenly, and drove many families away. Soon most of her rooms became empty. But she refused to change. Then one day, government officials arrived for an inspection. They discovered serious structural problems with the building. The house was unsafe. Within weeks, the property was sealed by authorities. Madame Briggs lost everything. The same woman who once threw people into the streets now had nowhere to go herself. The unexpected reunion. Months later, Amaka stepped out of her office building after work. Across the street, she noticed a woman sitting on a bench. Her clothes looked worn. Her posture tired. It took a moment for Amaka to recognize her. It was Madame Briggs. The proud landlady looked nothing like before. Their eyes met. Madame Briggs immediately looked away in shame. She expected anger, revenge. Instead, Amaka walked toward her calmly. Good evening, madam, she said. Madame Briggs looked shocked. I heard you are doing very well now, she murmured. Amaka nodded. Yes. God has been kind. There was a long silence. Then Amaka spoke again. If you need help finding a place to stay, I know someone who can assist. Madame Briggs stared at her in disbelief. You would help me, after everything I did? Amaka smiled gently. Life already taught us both enough lessons. Tears filled the older woman's eyes. At that moment, Madame Briggs realized something powerful. The woman she once humiliated had become stronger, kinder, and more successful than she ever imagined. And the victory she once celebrated was never truly a victory. Because in the end, kindness always wins.